So today we're going to have a look at the new controls and also the Northern Ireland Protocol. Before we kick off though, I just wanted to give you an overview of the Chamber for those of you who don't know us. So we are a membership organisation. We are the largest accredited Chamber of Commerce in the UK with over 4,500 members, and you can see there we cover all areas of Greater Manchester, so all 10 local authorities. And if you're out of the area and you still want to engage with our services, you're more than welcome to join these events and sessions. So today we are going to have a look at customs declarations, the latest changes with the delayed and deferred declarations. We'll have a quick chat about the rules of origin. It is quite a complex topic and today's session is just basic. So any more specific questions, we will take those offline and obviously get back to you. Have a look at the changes with export and import documentation. We're going to talk a bit about transit, Northern Ireland, and then finally we'll just finish off with some of the grants and the support that is available for companies to make sure you're all aware of that. So I'm just going to hand over to my colleague Yerlivis, who's going to launch a poll just to gauge who we've got on the call today. So over to you, Yerlivis.
Good morning, everyone. So the first question we have is, what would you say describes best your company's export experience? We'll just wait for some more answers to come in. And here we go. So we've got 58% experienced exporters, 32% occasional exporters, and 11% new to export.
Great, thank you. So like I said, today's session is going to be covering the basics of the trade agreement. So for those of you who are more experienced, if you've got any more complex questions, we can obviously take those offline after today's session. Just going to reshare my screen. It seemed to have froze. So what has changed since we left the EU? What's changed from the 1st of January this year? So trade is now subject to controls, which I'm sure you're aware of. That didn't happen before. Even though we have that deal, customs declarations are now required for all exports and imports to and from the EU, as well as the rest of the world. Customs duties need to be paid, and we're going to talk a little bit more about tariffs later on. VAT can now be zero rated on your exports, but please note that VAT is payable on imports. So we've seen a lot of confusion saying, no, the VAT's definitely zero rated. So it's zero rated from an export if you're bringing goods in from the EU, but at import, HMRC expect VAT to be paid, and we'll talk about some of the ways on how you can postpone that VAT a little bit later on. Customs declarations. So these are an official document that lists the goods coming into and out of the UK. Like I said, they are now required for all exports and imports. They are submitted via the Chief Customs Handling of Import and Export Freight, and it's up to you whether you, a few of our companies that we're working with have looked at bringing this in-house. Most companies are still using a freight forwarder or a customs agent, or the Chamber can also assist with completing the declaration. I'm sure you've heard enough about EORI numbers, but you do need an EORI number to complete the declaration. And one of the latest changes announced in March is as part of the border operating model, you'll be aware that you can actually delay completing that import declaration for up to 6 months unless you are bringing in controlled goods, which are things like excise goods. They have now extended that till the 1st of January 2022. So that doesn't mean that you get until the 1st of January to complete any export declarations. It's 6 months from the time of import. And what we're seeing is a lot of companies that are actually still choosing to do the full declaration. So they're doing the full declaration prior to the goods arriving or a couple of days after, so they don't have to worry in 6 months' time that they've got all the details to complete that import declaration. So that's a company choice for yourselves. The checks on agri-food and feed have been delayed until the 1st of October, so everything's been shifted by 6 months. So that was due to be April, it's now October, so things like health certificates and checks and food products. However, full customs declarations are required for export, so you should be completing those documents, or your agent should be completing the documents at export on your behalf. You'll probably notice if you are importing goods that there's very limited checks at the border at the minute, so goods might be coming in if the driver just has your EORI number on the paperwork. We're seeing a lot of issues where EU suppliers are sending goods and saying the UK company is using simplified procedures, and then the goods are arriving at the UK company's warehouse and you suddenly need to do this import declaration, so please be aware of that. And you'll see there that as of now, all goods will be subject to full customs controls from the 1st of January 2022. So what kind of information are you going to need to be passing on to your agent, or are you going to need to be completing the customs declaration? So you're going to need to know who is the exporter and importer and their EORI numbers, the origin of the goods, particularly important for import because that's going to determine the tariffs and duties you're paying, the value of the goods, transport details are required, commodity codes, so HS codes, tariff codes, and remember that that's 8 digits for export, but it's actually 10 for import. So if you're bringing goods in, you will need those additional 2 digits. Customs procedure code, so that is the reason for export and import. Again, seeing a lot of questions coming from our members and non-members at the minute who are emailing asking about customs procedure codes. What's the standard? What if your goods are going in for repair or they're being sent for test purposes and coming back? That all depends on the customs procedure code, and that goes on the declaration, so HMRC know how your goods should be treated. And then any additional documentation or license information. And just speaking about customs declarations, I'm just going to hand back over to you, Livis, who's got another quick poll on customs declarations.
So our next question for you is, what have you considered in terms of customs with the EU? Are you completing your customs declarations in-house? Are you using customs brokerage services, or you're not doing nothing about it? Just wait for a couple of more answers to come in. Almost. All right, so we've got 25% companies doing customs declarations in-house, 65% using customs brokerage services, and 10% doing nothing about it.
Thank you. So we're going to move away from customs declarations and move on to rules of origin, which again, another area that's causing a lot of issues for our members at the minute. Again, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to cover all the specifics because it does really depend on your commodity code and the trade agreement. But I'll just talk a little bit about how to determine that. So you will be aware that although we have got the trade agreement with the EU, that no tariffs or quotas on goods that qualify as providing they meet those rules of origin. And EU content can also be included in the number of UK trade agreements which the UK has agreed. So what does this mean for yourselves? So it will mean there is a maximum amount of non-originating material, so materials that may not originate in the EU, that will then allow you to see whether you can claim those 0% duty rates. So for example there, if you look at chapter heading 95, if that's one of your commodity codes, toys, games and sports, the maximum of non-originating material is 50%. So only 50% can come from outside the EU to then qualify for the 0%. So you have to be substantially transforming your goods or making some kind of change to then export them to the EU and qualify for that 0% duty. Now, a lot of the confusion that's come up with this is if, for example, a UK company is importing from China, they're paying the duty as the goods come into the UK, and then you re-export those to the EU with maybe just changing the packaging. That doesn't count as a significant change. And then when the goods go into the EU, another duty is being paid, say, by your Spanish customer. And again, Where it's caused issues as well is if you're using something like the GSP system and you're bringing goods in at lower or nil rate of duty, and they're being declared into the EU or being declared into the UK and then moved on to the EU, they then don't qualify for that GSP. So we are running a webinar, a bite-sized session in a couple of weeks' time with a rules of origin expert. So if you think that that could impact you, I'd strongly recommend that you log into that session and get some more details. How do you evidence that you are eligible for the preferential tariff? So you need a statement of origin from the exporter on the invoice, or alternatively, it can be done on your knowledge as the importer. But please note that HMRC do require to have proof that those goods have met the origin requirements. You do not need to hold a supplier's declaration at the time of claiming the preference until the 31st of December this year. So you've got a bit of time, and a statement on the invoice is currently enough for those goods to qualify for the preferential tariff. Now we're just going to move on to VAT. So I'm sure that some of you on the call will be aware that postponed VAT accounting has now come into play since the 1st of January, and that's not just for EU countries, but also for non-EU countries. So like I said earlier, import VAT is applicable on all your imports coming in, unless they are 0 rated. So how do you pay that VAT? So you can pay it up front. You can use something like a deferment account. So you have an agreement with HMRC, you pay the VAT at a later date. Or alternatively, and this is what a lot of our companies are currently using, it's the postponed VAT accounting. So that means that you declare and recover your VAT on the same VAT return. So rather than having to pay it at your import and then declaring it and recovering it on your VAT return at a later date. And again, we're going to have HMRC running a full session on postponed VAT accounting in a couple of weeks' time, so they can talk you through what you'll receive from HMRC and how that's all declared. So you can be eligible for that if you are importing your goods for business use and you are currently VAT registered in the UK. And we will share these slides, so you'll have all the links, relevant links of how it works and to read more about it. Incoterms, so something that we talk about at a lot of our bite-sized sessions, training courses, events. So they're international commercial terms that define where the risk and cost transfers from you as a seller over to your buyer and vice versa. So there's 11 terms, which you can see there. The ones in green are for any mode of transport, and the ones in blue are for sea and inland waterways. And we do have a handy graphic on our website if anyone's interested in downloading it. It's free to download. It shows all the 11 terms. It shows where your responsibilities change in terms of who's paying for the transport, who's taking the risk, who's paying for the insurance, and also, more importantly, who's responsible for the import and the export clearance. So remember, if you're using something like Xworks as the exporter, you are handing all responsibility to your customer, so they are responsible for both the export and imports clearance, which can cause issues if they don't have things like GB ORI numbers. And also lots of questions coming in at the minute about delivered duty paid, where you are responsible for the export and the import clearance if you're the exporter. And again, if you're going to the EU, that means you need to have an EU ORI number. And there's some complications as well there with VAT. So are you VAT registered? Can you reclaim the VAT? And we do have a partner who can work with you on that if you're looking at reclaiming VAT, whether it's worthwhile getting a VAT registration. So please just contact the team if you've got any issues with delivered duty paid and you want to discuss. Okay, changes with documentation and what we can now assist with as the chamber. So you might be aware that we have now started to issue the UK certificates of origin. So we've moved away from EC, European Community, and we now issue our UK certificate of origin. So that's where a non-preferential document, and it's evidence to show where the goods were originally manufactured. So if your customers are asking for a certificate of origin, they are available via your local chamber, via ourselves and our online platform as well. EUR1, so again, we've moved into the UK EUR1. which we can now issue. So these are for preferential treatment. So if you're exporting to a country where the UK has a trade agreement and your customer may be able to get their goods in at a lower rate of duty if you produce a UK EUR1 somewhere like Chile. And there's a list of all the countries that that's eligible for there in that link, which we'll share afterwards. ATA carnets, so again, we expect to see a rise in this document, so worth just noting if you're attending exhibitions, particularly in the EU, you're sending equipment that will be returned or any kind of commercial samples. So we've got a team on hand that can help you process carnets, and maybe when the world starts to open up for travel and exhibitions, we expect to see a rise in those. So the UK signed up in their own right, and they can be used for EU countries. Customs declarations, so we've already talked about that, and please note that we no longer issue the ATR documents for Turkey, so the new trade agreement with Turkey no longer requires an ATR document to access the preferential rates of duty. Transit, so I think this is an area that we've received so many queries and lots of similar organisations to us. We weren't expecting this demand. So you may have been asked for this by your EU customer, or it may be that the goods coming in are travelling on transit. So it could be also known as a T1 or a TAD. And this is used if you don't want to clear customs in the first country of arrival. So for example, if you're exporting goods from the UK and they first hit Calais and then they go up to Switzerland and then on to Italy, and your customer is in Italy and that's where they want to clear the goods, that's where they want to pay any relevant duty. So to save them paying duty and clearing the goods in France, in Switzerland and in Italy, you can use the transit document. It's usually dealt with by hauliers or an agent, and it's generated electronically via the new computerized transit system. Like I said, we've received lots and lots of queries on this. So the Chamber are currently looking at a solution, working with our members to help you, because currently we're unable to assist, but hopefully in the next few weeks that will change. So if you've got any issues with transit, you've got any questions, please contact us and we'll see if we can assist. And just to gauge if any of you are using transit, I'm going to hand over to you, Liz, with another poll.
Yes, you should be able to see the poll now on your screen. We have, do you currently use transit or T1s? Get a couple of minutes for people to reply. All right, so we've got 10% to people using transit or T1s. We have 55% who are not using them and 35% are unsure.
Perfect, thank you. So we've got quite a few people on the call already using transit, some of you that are unsure. So like I said, if you're still unsure and you want to get in touch, if you think it might be of help, then please let us know. Okay, so just moving on to Northern Ireland, and again, just the basics about how trade is with Northern Ireland. We're aware there are a number of issues currently that our members are experiencing, and we're working on solutions to try and work with you and obviously feeding back to government to hopefully make this a little bit smoother going forward. So just to quickly recap, be aware that there's no border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, and that Northern Ireland remains part of the EU single market, as well as the UK customs territory, and can benefit from any future UK trade agreements. So I'll do this slide just so you know when customs declarations are needed. So they're not required when moving goods between NI and the EU. They're not required when moving goods directly from NI to the rest of GB. However, they are required for movements from the rest of GB, so if you're exporting here into Northern Ireland. However, please note there's no duty payable unless your goods are deemed at risk of moving on to the Republic of Ireland. I'm going to talk about some of those ways to avoid the duty costs. So when do the tariffs apply? So you can claim zero duty if the UK originating goods, according to the rules of origin, that we've already talked about. If you declare your goods not at risk of movement onto the EU via the UK Trader Scheme, or if your goods are travelling under some kind of special customs procedures or they're going into a customs warehouse. I'm sure you're all aware of the new trader support service that's been launched to assist companies that do need to do the declarations with Northern Ireland. It's free to use and the TSS can complete declarations on your behalf. We have received feedback that some companies are currently struggling to complete declarations, and we're working on that as a chamber to try and offer a solution to support you with that. So I think one of the issues we've seen is with the supplementary declarations. These are required if you've moved goods from GB to NI after the 1st of January via the TSS. You need to submit a supplementary declarations after the goods move, and it's likely that you're going to have to provide TSS with the additional information, which we are aware is causing a bit of confusion with companies currently. So at the chamber, we currently don't have access to the new customs declaration service, so we complete our declarations into Chief, like we talked about earlier. However, for Northern Ireland, as they are still in the EU single market, we need to use the CDS system, and lots of agents and ourselves as the chamber, we're currently working on the access, making sure that's right before we agree, we can assist you with the declarations. So at the minute, the chamber unable to assist, and it is being done via TSS. However, we are going to run a training course in the coming months with a bit more information. So if you're struggling with Northern Ireland with submitting supplementary declarations, again, hopefully we can support you through that. And over to you, Liz, for our final poll.
All right, there we go. So how have you found the movement of goods since 1st January 2021? Has that been straightforward, relatively straightforward, difficult, or extremely difficult? Lots of answers coming in. Just wait a couple of seconds more. And there we go. 5% have found it straightforward, 25% relatively straightforward, 50% difficult, and 20% extremely difficult.
Thank you, Liz. So yeah, worrying that 50% of you, well, over 70% of you are still finding it difficult or extremely difficult. Please do get in touch with any issues you're facing. We will feed those into our policy team, into the British Chambers of Commerce. If there's anything we can do, such as arranging phone calls or getting in touch with some further training or emails, we'll do our best to support you where we can. So please do get in touch if you want to send forward your issues, and we can look into them and pass them on to the relevant people. I'm just going to share now my final few slides. I'm sure, again, that you've heard a little bit about the SME Brexit Support Fund. So before Christmas, we had the customs intermediary. So for those of you that were looking at completing customs declarations, there was money for training, grant money for training and getting software. Unfortunately, that's all now run out. So please don't make an application to the wrong fund or you will get it rejected. The new fund that has been announced is the SME Brexit Support Fund. You can see there, it's administered by PwC. I've put in bold the link at the bottom, so you can apply for a training grant for up to £2,000. It has to be to support your goods getting into the EU, so it can be training on customs, tax, duties, controls, or anything that's going to support you with getting your goods into the EU. So for those of you finding it difficult, if there's any training that you can help apply for. And also the consultancy grants. So if you're wanting more one-to-one advice on VAT, customs, again, VAT duty, please do get in touch. So we've designed some packages that will allow you to apply for this fund and that are eligible for the fund. We can also put together some bespoke packages. So if you're looking at applying, we'd urge you to apply sooner rather than later. We saw some of our members lose out on the customs declaration grant, so please do apply sooner rather than later. The deadline, I believe, is June for applications, unless funds run out sooner, and you have to complete all your training and consultancy by August. Okay, so you have got a little bit of time, but it is quite a short time frame. And just so you're aware, some of our upcoming events, we're going to switch our focus slightly away from Brexit and into new markets. So if you're looking into the US, in Pakistan, we're also going to have an event on Austria. We're going to start to introduce some of our new market events. Our next Bitesize session will take place in 2 weeks' time and will be on Incoterms. And then the following import basics, and we have one on VAT. So like I said, lots coming up on VAT and rules of origin. And on the 18th of June, we will be running a more specific training session on the Northern Ireland Protocol, and hopefully we'll be able to give you some more information on the supplementary declarations and support there. Again, if it's training and it's mentioned there, it's all eligible for the SME Brexit support grant. And that's it from me. Thank you. I'll hand back over to you, Elvis.
Thank you, Amy. We open now the opportunity for questions. So if you have any questions that you would like to do, you can ask either on the chat or in the Q&A box, and we'll be replying. In the meanwhile, we'll also be sharing a final poll for you to share your thoughts on this event with us.
Okay, so we'll just give you a couple more questions. If you, while you're thinking of any questions, if you can just have a go at filling out our feedback that we've just launched. You're all very quiet today, no questions? Okay, like I said, we'll wrap up then. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you again in 2 weeks' time for our session on Incoterms. If you've got any questions you want to send in the information, if you're having any difficulties, we'll put our email address up now, so you've got that if you've got any questions you want to send in after.
Amy, there's a question in the Q&A.
Yeah, we've just got a question on the box. It's a statement of origin. I made a note that up until a certain date, the statement is enough without further proof. What proof is then needed after this date?
Karina, it's likely we'll switch to a declaration from your supplier as proof of origin after. So it's up till the 31st of December, and then would require some kind of declaration from your supplier.
All right, thank you. And we've got another question. Is there a list of hauliers who have T1s?
Not that we've currently got at the chamber, Stacey, but certainly something we can go out to our members and ask if we can pull together a list. We're looking at running another one of our logistic forums for our logistic companies, so something we can put to that group if you want to join us, Stacey, and then we can produce a little bit of a list.
We've got another question from Corinne. It says, statement from supplier, is this just a letter or something more formal like an authorized certificate of origin?
Karina, we will send in our follow-up email the exact wording from the EU trade agreement that needs to be to declare the origin. So we'll send through the wording so you've got that.
Yes, I've also shared our email on the chat. If after the session you have any further questions, please feel free to email us on that. And yes, we'll be sending the slides in the following weeks.
Any more questions before we close the session? Okay, well, thank you for joining us and hopefully see you in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you.